All right, we're back with another special edition for you. Got a special guest all the way from the heartland of America. He is a singer, musician, songwriter, vocalist, and so much more. Please welcome Brandon Gibbs.
Hello, happy to be here.
Brandon, man, when I hear Riverside, I'm thinking the Inland Empire out here east of LA, but you're in the other Riverside,
Yes.
out there part of Iowa City, where
Uh,
the Iowa Hawkeyes go wild.
yeah. Well, um, I'm telling you what, my wife and I moved to Nashville. Oh, it's 12, 13, 14 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And we absolutely loved it. And Ricky and I got a record deal while I was living in Nashville with Devil City Angels. And just been on the road so much that we wanted to find a place to raise our daughter and have her around her cousins and grandma and grandpa. And we hit the jackpot with Iowa City, Iowa. My wife works at a wonderful university, and I am not too far away from the Cedar Rapids Airport. And we're living the dream, and we're in the Midwest. I mean, all our friends here are farmers and just we farmers, mechanics. I mean, we're the blue collar crowd over here, and then I get to go and play awesome places and come back and tell all these wild
Well,
stories.
well, that's it. I moved to LA in 1980 after growing up around the world and across the country, and it's where everything emanated from. It's New York or LA, but now you see so many bands where all their members are in different states, and they have to kind of fly in to do a show. It's kind of crazy. Now you can kind of live where you want to and
Yes,
commute and all that. Um,
yeah,
and we're talking about your good friend, you Ricky Rockett. And truth be told, I was one of their first promoters when they drove cross country all the way from Pennsylvania out here to Hollywood, um, playing places like the Troubadour and the Country Club. I was a promotion guy since the mid 70s. So I immediately saw the potential. And they moved into I'll call it a house. You've probably heard about it. The place where my previous band I managed was called Steeler. And they, of course, introduced the world to Ron Keel and Yngwie Malmsteen and all the greats. But they lived in the back of a dry cleaners, and it was in South Central LA off of Washington Boulevard. Not exactly Hollywood or the Valley. It was let me say they were the only light complected people in the neighborhood. And did you ever hear about that? Did Ricky ever tell you about the place they lived in when they first moved to LA?
Bobby Dahl picked me up. We were doing a video there, and he had business there. And he buy a house that they had. I mean, that was like, well, and, um, people
Your
coming out.
your your sound's kind of coming in and out. Make sure your mic is working okay there.
Maybe I get closer. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that might be better. So
Okay.
Bobby told you about the rough place they lived or the house they lived off of Mulholland, because that's two radically different levels there.
His would be the house that they lived on. It was a
That
white,
was up by the Hollywood Bowl. That was off of Mulholland.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's I knew about. Yep.
okay. Well, he hasn't told you about the down and dirty, the dues they had to pay before Howard Huberman got him, into that house. It was a whole nother level, believe me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and driving all the way from Pennsylvania, I know it was an eye opener. Like, oh boy, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Well, you know what? That's the thing about Poison is they stuck it out, and there was a goal, and they never moved away from that goal. They were going to be rock stars, and but that's what they became. Especially Bobby. I mean, he says that in the MTV Behind the Music or VH1 Behind the Music. That's what he wanted to be, and he became that. Um, I've seen that house. I do, I know about the dirty times, but like the earlier, but I never saw those homes. But I got to see that
Yeah.
one.
Well, unfortunately, it's bulldozed now. But when I say the main tenants in the place they lived were roaches. That kind of gives you an idea of the environment. Cold concrete floors with a lot of roaches. So you had to get your little bed, whatever you were sleeping on at night, kind of up off the floor, or they'd be crawling all over you.
And these aren't the roaches that you roll up and smoke either.
No, no, those were not in the ashtray. Believe me, they were coming in,
Trying to
and
eat your
they
food.
they took over.
Yeah.
But like I say, Ingve flew all the way from Sweden and encountered that coming from LAX. So
Yeah.
I know the boys driving cross country from Pennsylvania. By the time they got there, they were just lucky to have a roof over their head. Because Hollywood can be a pretty daunting challenge to rise above.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's
100%.
cool. How did you first meet Ricky and the boys?
I was opening. I had to open for them. I had to. I was blessed to open for them. My brother and I, twin brother and I, worked at a movie theater, and we asked our boss. We were in the music. We were starting getting into music, and we couldn't play anywhere because we couldn't get into bars. So we asked our boss at the movie theater. There was a stage down in the middle of the movie theater if we could play there someday. Yeah, he goes, what's the business plan? You know, like, well, instead of a movie at 9 o'clock, we'll do a concert and we'll sell tickets. And we're talking like $3, and you get a large soda and popcorn to see a show. It was my twin brother and I, and my dad, and we were called the GIBBS brothers. Well, that evening, a successful promoter, and you can't even hardly make this up, took his wife out for dinner for her birthday, but he bought a limousine, and he was coming past this movie theater, and he saw a line out the door, and he said, let's pull in. I want to see what's happening. There was no alcohol served. I don't know why he was even there. It was their nightcap, and they bought tickets, and they watched us play at this movie theater. And like 2.5 weeks later, I was jumping on the trampoline with my girlfriend. Um, and my mom poked her head outside with the screen door, and she says, "Hey, there's a promoter on the phone." Well, I didn't really know what that was. And she's like, "Oh, you got to talk to him." And I talked to him, and it was, I like what you guys do, and I like the fact you have your dad in the band, and would you like to? Well, he said, I have this idea of having you start or end a festival on Father's Day, and the band is Poison, and I got to clear it with them, but you guys would be a perfect opener. Father's Day, you guys, and anyways, Poison accepted that we could open up for them, and it just became a ginormous relationship where if they needed somebody and we were so green, they would just call us, and we'd just come out and open for them. And that relationship kept going and going, and I met Cinderella through them. Jeff LeBar, Eric Brittingham, and I formed a band. We went all over the world. Um, it honestly was luck. A lot of it was luck.
Was Poison supporting their debut album?
I believe it was Hollyweird.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, it was Hollyweird. That's how long ago it was.
Okay.
And we,
So
a small part of that.
yeah. Well, I know the era well, and they were kind of fighting for survival. They had come off, of course, open up and say and all of that, and it sounds like it was kind of the early '90s. Might that have been?
Not early 90s. It was more early 2000s.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh yeah, 2002 was Hollyweird. That's right.
right. So I think it was Ricky's girlfriend that had the badass tattoo on the chopper motorcycle,
Uh-huh.
and that was the record that they went out to tour on, and we did the most shows with them during that record, and I think we were like And I just thought that's a show, that is a show. And we became friends, and Ricky produced my first band's kind of debut original record. And I've just been friends. I've been friends with Rockett now for 20 years.
Okay. And what do you think it was about your personality that you guys kind of clicked? Was it the creative? What was the spark, you think?
I think the reason that we clicked was I was taught early on, when I started getting these amazing opportunities, to stay out of the way, and but do a wonderful job, but stay out of the way. Don't take advantage of this wonderful scene. So we were goats. So we would go play, and just give everything we had, and we almost didn't make eye contact, didn't want to go back to the catering or where the shower was, and get out of everyone's way. And there was one night Rockett was like, "Hey, uh, where's your brother?" He said that to one of his assistants, and they like they play. I think I don't know if they're playing the same drum kit, but he had a fascination with my brother's drums, and my brother had a fascination with his drums. And all of a sudden, they just pulled us aside and like, "Hey, let's chat. Let's have a conversation." And so that whole like stigma of play, get out of the way, it worked for us. But then they called us to like go hang, and we were just flabbergasted. I mean, we were teenagers, maybe had our driver's license.
Okay.
That it just that bond, like grandma and grandpa, my mom and dad, like everyone was there to see us play before Poison, and they just made us family, and we're still family to this day.
Yeah, in a way, you guys probably reminded them of themselves, early on when they were back in Pennsylvania, putting on their own shows, trying to decide, do we go to New York, which is close, or do you drive all the way across the country to LA? And I'm sure they saw the imagery of, you know, Motley Crue and Rat and all these bands exploding after Van Halen, on the strip, and they're like, no, no, it's LA, definitely.
I remember them saying there was two choices, New York or LA, and they obviously picked the right choice because that was the scene. Not that there wasn't a scene in New York, but that's exactly where Poison, a band like Poison,
Yeah.
needed to be.
Well, the first time I saw him was at the Country Club, which I don't know if you've heard about, but it was an amazing club out in Reseda in the middle of the San Fernando Valley.
Hmm.
And it had a high stage, held about 1,000 people. So when you're on that stage, looking over the audience in this big, big room, you felt like you were at an arena. It was the
Sure.
closest thing to like the Forum or Madison Square Garden, you know. And unlike the Whiskey or the Roxy or the, you know, Troubadour, that was had a much smaller stage and a smaller room, you felt like you made it. Of course, Motley Crue, Metallica, I mean, you name it, they all played at the Country Club.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was taken aback, with their showmanship. Of course, with Brett and Bobby and Cece up front, they just, they put on a show. And of course, you see Ricky in the back twirling his sticks, and you know,
Oh, we got such an education because I was a blues man. I wanted to make it in the blues, and blues didn't really have any flamboyant things happening. I mean, Stevie Ray would be the most flamboyant, putting the guitar behind his head or the guitar behind his back. And these guys had imagery and staging. It was a total karate kick in the gut. I'm like, oh, this is how you do it. So you can have fun uh, playing music, and you don't have to look at your feet because you're so nervous. Just go out and do what they do. If they mess up, no one would know because they're having so much fun. And Poison changed my perspective on how to perform live.
well, they had almost been away for 10 years. Native Tongue had come out in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time they came back with Hollyweird, I mean, they had kind of let the grunge thing kind of play through, and then realized that now people are already nostalgic for, what was happening in the 80s by then.
They came back at such a wonderful time. I mean, United, all those wonderful bands, the Quiet Riot, the Firehouse, Great White. I mean, it was just like it was like things started happening again, and people rediscovered their roots. And I mean, they were the brave ones that put out a record, and let's go. They went against all odds. They always have, and Hollywood was just cool. I mean, whether or not you like the record or you go to the show, you just see what Hollywood looks like up on stage, and they capture that perfect, picture perfect.
Well, of course, they had a cover of the Who song, Squeeze Box. They used to play We're an American Band by Grand Funk and some of those classics.
Yeah, yeah.
It was really, it was a great time. And it's great that Ricky stayed in touch. Now tell us, at one point, the guys are kind of restless. Here's Brett doing his solo thing. Of course, as the voice of Poison, he can go out and kind of do all the hits and have another guitarist, bass player, and drummer back him up. But Ricky and Bobby and Cece are like, man, it's harder for us to do that. But they had faith in you, and you guys went out and did some shows. What'd you call the band?
We called it the special guest.
The special guest. Okay.
Yeah, so Rocket and I were coming off of a tour with Devil City Angels, and he got a call that there was interest to have the three of them with me for some shows. And I remember coming off the bus. I was in Dallas and came off the bus and I went into the workout room. He's like, "Are you interested?" He's working out. He's like, "Is this something you're interested in?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I'll go with you guys and let's see what happens." So I flew out to meet Bobby Dahl, which I've been friends with Bobby. I went out to hang out with him and learn what they were trying to do. And a special, sorry, my dog's freaking out, but the special guest is something I'll always hold near and dear to me. We didn't care what critics said. We just went out, played those hits, and honestly, it was one of the most fun concerts I've played. It was just, yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit younger than them, and the fact that they trusted me with those songs, and I respected Brett and their legacy. I mean, it was just fun. Those were fun songs to sing.
Yeah, no, it's a dream come true. You kind of pinch yourself. You look to your left and right, and it's like, shit, these are the Poison guys, and I'm out front. What were some of your favorite songs when you look through the set you played? Which ones really stand out? Like, man, I can't wait to attack that one live.
Something to Believe in would be a great one.
Uh-huh.
I love, I love how patriotic they are, and it's just a beautiful song. And my friend Will Dowdy has been with Poison for 13, 14 years now. Plays the intro beautifully. Um, but I can tell you, there's nothing like their intro, "Highway to Hell,"
Uh-huh.
and then CC firing up, "Look What the Cat Dragged In."
Oh yeah.
It just gave me wings. I'm like, all right, let's go. Um,
Yeah, no, I was doing promotions in those early days. I almost made an attempt to sign them. I talked to their lawyer, Rob Toro, and he said, "Oh man, you're just a little too late. We just started talking on this little label Enigma, and they made us an offer. And I'm not going to say how low it was, but it was a very modest budget. They made the first record,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I continued to do promotions for the guys. And when that first record came out, and Cry Tough comes out, and they're playing at the Palace, and they did their first big record store in store, where they did an appearance at Sunset Boulevard in La Brea, the place called the Warehouse.
Oh, nice.
And they'll probably tell you about it, man. The line was around the block, and they pulled the tour bus right on the side of the store there, and it was a big scene. They had a full page ad in the LA Weekly,
I love it.
which is the big free, Hollywood publication, and
Yeah.
they were like conquering heroes. They're now out playing outside of LA, but
Yep.
we adopted them as a hometown group.
Yeah.
even though three of the four guys were from Pennsylvania. Of course, Cece's from New York, but they all they were all becoming men, in LA and California. So
Yeah. I,
we
I
consider them a West Coast band, but they are truly America's band.
yeah, they're an American band. I mean, just like the song, that's what they did. They wanted the dream, they went and found it, they executed it, and they still have a legacy and a wonderful catalog that that when they want to go work, everybody celebrates. It's pretty cool.
Did you get a chance to see or have any friends that went to see the stadium tour with Def Leppard and Motley Crue?
I was on the stadium tour for a little while.
Okay. What
So
cities were you in?
I started in Jacksonville, and so Brett, I think, had COVID or something to that effect, and
Okay.
so I helped, just helped him get through the show. My job was just to back him up, make sure vocally that he could get through the show. I mean, he's a warrior; like he's not going to miss a show. And he had a hard time. His speaking voice was tough, and so they flew me out. And well, excuse me, I started in Nashville, which we didn't do, and we picked up in uh, Jacksonville, and we did some casinos along the way, and I think I ended in Detroit. It wasn't that long of a run. I think maybe 2 weeks or something like that. I was with them.
Okay.
And
So it was a combination of the stadium shows and then they had some headline shows at the casinos.
yeah, yep. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
I did to answer your question. I saw, I mean, more people than I've ever seen in my life. I've played arenas. I've never played a stadium in my life. So I just back, whatever they needed. I've always been that guy. Uh, they've changed my life and give me so much grace that they didn't have to. If they call, I'll drop what I'm doing. If someone's sick, if they need anything, I'm going to be right there. So that's what I did on the stadium.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see. All those bands came from humble roots. I was one of Motley Crue's first promoters when they came out with Too Fast for Love on an independent label, and they had no money. Of course, the famous, apartment they destroyed, and you see it in the dirt, right there on Clark Street, on the side of the whiskey, and you know, they they just grew from nothing, same as Poison, and even Def Leppard. First time I saw them, they were opening for the group Blackfoot,
Yeah.
which is a southern band. Ricky Medlock, who's in Leonard Skinner, he
Right.
his band, and I knew of them from their first album. They were supporting the second one, High and Dry, Santa Monica Civic, and all these kids with denim jackets with patches all over them, man, packed the front, for Def Leppard. And I said, oh shit, these guys, they got an audience. And then the next year they come out with Pyromania, and the rest is history.
Rest is history after that one.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
know Poison got a lot of accolades on that tour. They're kind of in the middle. There was an opening act, classless act, and then there was Joan Jett. So they kind of caught the people, even though it was still light out. They caught them, when they had energy.
Man,
Once you've sat through five acts, it's tough to keep that energy up. But I
I
just saw
don't.
Def Leppard again this summer with Journey and Cheap Trick in Denver at the
Yeah.
big stadium, and it's just one hit after the other.
And I'm telling you, like when we would go change our clothes, like those guys would do a meet and greet prior to the show,
Yeah.
and then we would change our clothes, and a golf cart would take us to the stadium stage. It was the perfect slot, and you wouldn't think that because you think 80s you want it dark and pyro and this and that. They set it up where there was lights. Um, you wouldn't know that it was daylight, and they played like like they weren't ever going to play again. And I think a lot of the world, people that went to the shows just noticed like, hey, Poison came out to uphold their legacy, and they did exactly that. There wasn't a bad phone it in show, and they've never done that, and they hold themselves accountable. And it was just as a fan, as a kid, I was just so impressed. And like the energy, it's 102, 103 degrees everywhere we went.
Yeah.
These guys don't care.
And of course, they got that ramp that goes out in the crowd that Brett's going to use to every effect.
Brett's one of the best frontmen in the business. He lives for that and does his Brett. There's you can't replace him. And even when I did the special guest, I'm like, I'm not gonna try to do his moves and just kind of uphold the legacy of the music and four guys that I got to know when I was a kid.
Yeah, you don't want to be the clone. You want to just do the songs justice. You want to sing them like they're supposed to be sung,
Yeah.
and you know let your natural ability shine. But yeah, he definitely. I saw that very early on that he lived for entertaining, the crowd, and of
Oh,
course he does it with his party gras and all that now. Now, how many years was it by the time they did the stadium tour that they'd really played together? What was the span? Was it like 6 years or something?
what was it? I think they went out with Motley in 2017, maybe. Or no, it was Def Leppard. They went out with Def Leppard and Tesla.
Okay.
And then before that, I think they went out with Motley Crue. If I'm
Okay. So it was at least a good 5, 6 years that they had really performed.
probably, yeah. I mean, because Ricky and I went off and did Devil City for a year and a half, and they weren't working at the time, but their cycle is well, that's why you always want to buy a ticket because you don't know where you're going to see them. You don't know when they're going to get active again.
Yeah. And that's the word. And Brett all along had suffered from diabetes. You're seeing these guys, the rock star life, you're on the bus and you see some hypodermic needles and you're thinking, oh my God, are they, shooting heroin? But, he's been a diabetes, survivor,
Yeah,
patient, all those years. And I know he's an inspiration to so many that have that.
yep.
And of course, like you say, with his father and his upbringing, they always supported the troops. I'm friends with Mark Farner from Grand Funk, and he's got a big following among troops. His song "Closer to Home." Um, a lot of the Vietnam veterans said they used to listen to that song every day. Over. I mean, they're in a rice paddy in the middle of nowhere. They don't even know what Vietnam was, and they would play that song. I'm getting closer to my home, just dreaming about making it back to the States, in one piece.
That's a beautiful. That's a beautiful, line. And I mean, I can just watching movies of how things unraveled in history. I'm a history buff. I like it, and to write that, I'm getting closer to my home. You can feel it. Like they're really banking on getting home, and that's a beautiful comparison for sure.
Yeah, and he's got the new version of that he recorded. Mark Slaughter produced it, so he's brought it like 45 years later, with new technology. So hats off to Mark. He's the true American legend. It's a shame those guys aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yep.
But yeah, Poison. We can always look forward to those classics. And in our next segment here, we're going to be talking about exactly that with our special guest, Brandon Gibbs, in the house.